In 2023, Boston photographers discovered photographs from 1902 that had been hidden for 121 years. When the images were enlarged, they revealed terrifying secrets from an orphanage that shocked the world. Marcus Rivera and Sarah Chen had spent 5 years specializing in the digital restoration of historical photographs at their studio in Boston's financial district. That afternoon, Sarah returned from a demolition site on Salem Street carrying a deteriorated cardboard box. "Marcus, this is different from everything we've seen," she said, placing the box on the work table. "The owner of the Victorian house allowed me to take it before the demolition. It was hidden behind a false wall in the basement." Marcus carefully opened the box, revealing dozens of glass plate photographs, perfectly preserved in their original wooden frames. "They're from 1902, Sarah murmured, reading a faded label. "St. Catherine's Orphanage, Brooklyn." The first images showed the austere facade of a brick building. Children posed in perfect rows, and officials with stern expressions. Everything appeared typical of early 20th century institutional photography. "There's something unsettling about these photos," Marcus commented, holding a plate up to the light. "The children's expressions. It's not just the usual rigidity of the era. It's something more." Sarah turned on the high-resolution scanner. "There's only one way to find out." The scanner illuminated the first photograph with millimetric precision. On the screen appeared St. Catherine's Orphanage, an imposing 4-story structure with small windows and discrete bars. "Look at the resolution of these plates," Marcus said, adjusting the controls. "Whoever took them knew exactly what they were doing. The quality is exceptional for 1902. Sarah examined the metadata. Photographer, Dr. Edmund Blackwood, a doctor taking photographs in an orphanage. That wasn't common in that era. The second image showed 30 children arranged in 3 rows in front of the building. They wore identical gray uniforms, long-sleeve shirts, and ankle-length pants. "Observe their posture," Marcus said, enlarging the image. "They're too rigid, even by 1902 standards. And look at their hands." Sarah leaned closer to the screen. Several children had their hands clenched into fists. Others kept them hidden. It was as if they were concealing something. The third photograph captured the interior, a dining hall with long tables and benches. On the walls hung posters listing rules in Gothic lettering. "Silence during meals, eyes down, hands visible, Sarah read. These rules are extremely rigid." The fourth image stopped them. It showed children in the infirmary with disturbing expressions, sunken eyes, pale cheeks, hunched postures. "Marcus," Sarah whispered, "these children don't look healthy." "Key." Marcus enlarged the image to its maximum. The details became sharper and more unsettling. In a bed at the back, an 8-year-old boy had bandages on both arms. Another child, seated in a chair, bore circular marks on his neck. "Sarah, are you seeing this?" Marcus asked, pointing. "Those don't look like accidental injuries." Sarah took notes. "We need to investigate Dr. Blackwood, a doctor photographing evidence or documenting experiments." The fifth photograph showed the refectory from another angle. 40 children sat in silence, with their heads lowered. In the background, 3 adults observed from an elevated platform. Marcus adjusted the contrast. "Look at the man in the center. He's holding a notebook and writing while watching the children eat, like he's taking clinical notes." "This isn't normal supervision," Sarah replied. The sixth image revealed the dormitory. Iron beds were aligned with military precision, without pillows. On each headboard, a chalkboard displayed a number written in chalk. "Are they numbering them?" Sarah murmured. "No names, just numbers." Marcus felt a chill. "Sarah, I think we're looking at evidence of something far more sinister than negligence." The seventh photograph prepared them for the worst. It showed the orphanage basement, stone walls, a metal table at the center, and shelves filled with jars of liquid. "Marcus," Sarah said, her voice trembling, What kind of orphanage has a laboratory in the basement? The 8th photograph revealed a scene that changed everything. It showed the same refectory, but from an elevated angle that captured details impossible to see from ground level. Marcus began enlarging the image systematically. At first, everything seemed normal: children eating in silence, supervisors watching. But when he enlarged the left corner, Sarah gasped. "My God, Marcus, are you seeing that?" In the enlarged section was a 10-year-old boy who was not eating. His eyes were completely white, his mouth frozen in a silent scream, and his hands gripped the table as if he were being forced to remain seated. Marcus increased the resolution further. "Look at his wrists. There are rope marks. But that was not all. When he enlarged the central section, they saw several children with expressions of absolute terror, staring at something beyond the frame. Their bodies were tense, some visibly trembling. "This isn't discipline," Sarah whispered. "These children are terrified." Marcus continued enlarging the image. In the right corner, a final detail made them step back. A child had collapsed on the floor while the others continued eating as if nothing had happened. "They're forcing them to ignore what happens," Marcus said. "They're so conditioned by fear that they don't even react when one of them collapses." Sarah stood and began pacing nervously. "Marcus, I think Dr. Blackwood wasn't documenting orphanage life. He was documenting crimes." Marcus saved all the images onto an encrypted hard drive. Sarah had already begun researching St. Catherine's Orphanage online. "Here it is," she said, reading from her laptop. St. Catherine's Orphanage operated in Brooklyn from 1898 to 1904. It was abruptly closed due to administrative irregularities. The director was Dr. Hamilton Cross, a specialist in experimental pediatric medicine. Marcus joined the search. "And what about Dr. Edmund Blackwood?" Sarah continued reading. Blackwood was a forensic doctor and photographer. He worked for the Boston police, documenting crime scenes, but between 1901 and 1903, he left his police work, right during the period when he took these photographs, Marcus observed. The 9th photograph showed an improvised medical office. Anatomical charts hung on the walls, but they were not standard illustrations. They depicted children's bodies, covered with marks and annotations. "Marcus, look at the doctor's table," Sarah said. "There are medical instruments, but also smaller photographs showing children in distress." "He was documenting everything," Marcus murmured. "Every experiment, every reaction, every victim." Sarah uncovered more information. In 1904, St. Catherine's was investigated after reports of missing children. The investigation was closed when Dr. Cross was found dead. Official cause: suicide. Marcus felt a knot in his stomach, and the missing children were never found. The records were sealed by court order and remain classified to this day. The 10th photograph was different. It did not show the orphanage. It was a portrait of Dr. Edmund Blackwood holding a handwritten letter toward the camera, as if he had set a timer to photograph himself. Marcus enlarged the image until the words became legible. With trembling hands, he began to read. "If someone finds these photographs, know that I tried to stop the horrors of St. Catherine's through legal means, but the authorities were bought or intimidated. Dr. Cross is performing medical experiments on defenseless children. He is marking them, drugging them, and worse." Sarah continued reading. "I have documented every crime with these photographs. The children are numbered like specimens. Many have died. Their bodies are buried behind the orphanage. Cross has threatened me with death, but I cannot live with this knowledge." The letter continued. "I have sent copies to 3 safe places, one in my house, one in my brother's basement on Salem Street, Tone, and one with Reverend Thomas Mitchell of the Episcopal Church of Brooklyn. If something happens to me, I hope someone will have the courage I didn't have." Marcus and Sarah looked at each other in silence. They had just found the Salem Street collection, hidden for 121 years. Sarah searched again. Marcus. Edmund Blackwood died in March 1903. Official cause: an accident involving photographic chemicals. He died 3 months before Dr. Cross. They murdered him to silence him, Marcus said, and they killed Cross when they couldn't control the scandal. Sarah discovered something else. The Episcopal Church of Brooklyn still exists. The current reverend is Michael Patterson. Marcus made a decision. We have to contact him. The next day, Marcus and Sarah visited St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Brooklyn. Reverend Michael Patterson, 65 years old, received them in his office, which was filled with old books. Reverend Patterson, Sarah began. We're investigating events at St. Catherine's Orphanage from 1902. We believe your predecessor, Reverend Thomas Mitchell, had important information. The Reverend's face darkened. Ah, St. Catherine's. I hoped that story would remain buried. He went to a filing cabinet and removed a rusty metal box. Reverend Mitchell left specific instructions before dying in 1945. This box was only to be opened if someone came asking about St. Catherine's with photographic evidence. Marcus showed him a printed photograph. The Reverend nodded gravely. Mitchell carried this secret for 40 years. In 1903, Dr. Blackwood came to him in total panic with identical photographs. Mitchell tried to take the evidence to the authorities, but Patterson opened the box, revealing yellow documents, more photographs, and a diary. Read this, he said, handing them Mitchell's diary. February 15th, 1903. Dr. Blackwood arrived at dawn. Trembling. He showed me photographs I wish I had never seen. Children being tortured in the name of medical science. Sarah continued reading. February 20th. I took the photographs to the police commissioner. 2 days later, I received death threats. The commissioner returned the photographs and told me to forget what I had seen. March 25th. Dr. Blackwood was found dead. His house was ransacked that night. I fear for my life. The final entry was heartbreaking. The children of St. Catherine's would never have justice in this life. Reverend Patterson showed them the full contents of Mitchell's box. Inside was a list of 37 missing children, ages 5 to 14, with dates ranging from 1900 to 1904. Mitchell tried to track every child, Patterson explained. He discovered that many had been transferred from other orphanages across New England, children without families, with no one to ask about them. Marcus studied the list. The names corresponded to the numbers written on the bed headboards. Sarah found something even more disturbing: a hand-drawn map of the land behind the orphanage, marked with X's in specific locations. Reverend, what do these marks mean? She asked. Patterson sighed deeply. Mitchell hired a private detective in 1904. After St. Catherine's was closed, they found remains. The room fell silent. How many? Marcus asked. 23 children, buried in shallow graves. Some showed evidence of medical experiments, perforated bones, rusted surgical instruments still present. Sarah felt nauseated. Why was this never made public? The detective was found dead a week later, Patterson said. His office was burned, along with all the files. Mitchell understood the message. Powerful forces were protecting these crimes. Patterson showed them newspaper clippings. The headlines spoke of successful orphanage reforms, but never mentioned St. Catherine's. The official story, continued, is that it closed due to financial problems. The records were sealed to protect the privacy of surviving orphans. Survivors? Marcus asked. Some managed to escape, Patterson replied. According to Mitchell, 5 children were rescued when the orphanage closed. They were sent to families in different states with their names changed. Patterson then handed them the most valuable document of all, a leather notebook belonging to Catherine O'Sullivan, a young nurse who worked at St. Catherine's between 1902 and 1903. Catherine was only 17 when she started, Patterson explained. At first, everything seemed normal, but she began documenting anomalies. Marcus opened the notebook. The first relevant entry read, August 15th, 1902. Children who arrive healthy mysteriously become ill. Dr. Cross calls them for special examinations in the basement. They return, different, scared, withdrawn, with strange marks. Sarah continued reading. August 2nd. I observed precise marks, like surgical incisions. Some have injections in the neck that leave them stunned for days. The entries grew more disturbing. September 5th. The youngest no longer remembered their names after these treatments. Timothy, 6 years old, asked me yesterday what his name was. The most chilling entry followed. October 3rd. I heard screams from the basement. I went down and saw Dr. Cross performing a procedure on Timothy. The child was conscious but paralyzed. He could only cry silently. Marcus felt sick. I ran to comfort him afterward. The entry continued, but Timothy was never the same. He died 3 weeks later of natural causes. The final entries documented the escape. March 10th, 1903. After they murdered Blackwood, I knew I had to act. March 12th. I helped 5 children escape through a basement window. I took them to families in different states with changed names. The final line read, I hope that someday someone will find this testimony and have the courage to expose the truth. Marcus and Sarah spent 3 weeks verifying every detail. They contacted genealogists, historians, and state archivists. Slowly, the full truth of St. Catherine's Orphanage emerged. Their investigation revealed that Dr. Cross received funding from the Institute for the Advancement of Behavioral Medicine, which was interested in research on child psychological development under extreme stress. The experiments included sensory deprivation, experimental drugs, and surgeries performed without anesthesia. Blackwood's photographs did not merely document abuse. They were evidence of crimes against humanity committed on American soil, using facial recognition technology. They identified 3 of the 5 children Catherine had helped escape. Their descendants confirmed long-held family stories about adoptive grandparents with changed names from Massachusetts. Marcus and Sarah made their investigation public. They contacted the Boston Globe, the New York Times, Harvard historians, and human rights organizations. The story went viral, triggering a federal investigation that opened the sealed files after 120 years. The documents revealed a conspiracy involving municipal officials, corrupt police, and a network of medical institutions that used orphanages as sources of research subjects. At an emotional ceremony at Brookline Cemetery, a memorial was installed bearing the names of all identified victims. Descended families of the survivors traveled from across the country to attend. Reverend Patterson led the ceremony. Marcus and Sarah continued their work with a renewed mission to uncover and give voice to stories silenced by time, ensuring that history's forgotten victims were finally remembered and received justice. The story of St. Catherine's became a case study in the importance of preserving historical evidence and in the power of photography to expose truths that some would prefer to keep buried forever.